before relative to art and transit and PSTA?
Maybe we take a little step back. This is Bonnie Epstein from our planning department, and we know that a lot of transit agencies around the country have incorporated public art into their system. For some cases, they were able to get, there was a program called Art in Transit, and a certain portion of the capital funding that an entity would get would have to be spent on art. I don't think they have the same thresholds now, but as an example, something like our Central Avenue BRT project, if it was done 10 years ago, 1% of the total cost of it was supposed to go into art. You just don't have those requirements anymore, but public art as part of a public transportation system is pretty popular. So there are places that incorporate public art. Sometimes it's community supported art. We have a video of LA Metro's sort of a brief overview of their art program, and then Bonnie can tell you a little bit about some of the art shelters that we have in our system and some of the art organizations that we've been talking to sort of brighten up some of the public transportation investments that we have.
Okay. Question for you, when you talk about that, is there anywhere where they talk about what is the value of public art and the value of art in transit? Because I envision that in our letter to our board, the one bit of feedback I've gotten was kind of like, isn't that sort of like a fluff type of thing of, looking at art in transit when we're worrying about not having enough, buses available, enough, the schedules are not tight enough and so on. Now focusing on art, but there are some real values to art in transit.
Well, I think there's a real,
that?
we could probably look up some studies for that. I don't think we have done that. But I mean, you know how you feel when you walk into some place that is well maintained and well appointed. It makes you feel better about going to a transit center. Marion Street Transit Center is a great example of that. There's a lot of public art and beauty in the facilities that Hart has built, and the executive director who built those was very much into public art and not in public artistry. She had a poet come to the city Tampa poet often come to her events. And when you are in that kind of environment, you feel better, you feel safer, and so there is this element of feeling good about where you are when there's public art. There's also that connection to the location that you feel when there's public art. It's the difference between, when you walk into this place, well, this feels industrial, and this feels utilitarian, and so that there is value in that, intrinsic value in having it be nice. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we talked about when we changed the look and the style of our shelters is they're brighter, they're more color, glass elements, color, instead of brown. The old ones are brown and dark, and you do feel different. Now, I mean, it's not to say that the new ones are perfect, but they do look pretty.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I sort of think about a cool shelter the same way you think about a cool bus. So when we did our circulator study, we put out some surveys, and one of the questions asked you to say what you thought was most important in the service frequency, the span, where you get to go, and people usually ranked last the type of vehicle. But in reality, people are much more likely to use the service if it's a cool vehicle, not just, dress it up a little bit. A trolley, a cute, touristy vehicle, people are much more likely to use. And I think of it the same way with a shelter. Like, if you see a cool looking shelter, you may want to go there and use it. And I mean, it's not something you really think about, but if you were walking around Central Avenue or somewhere in downtown and you saw a cool, art shelter, you would walk over to it and check it out and see what it's about, I think.
Well, it's not only enjoyed by the rider, but it's enjoyed by the community.
I think, it attracts people the same way like a cute trolley may attract you to be like, oh, well, maybe I'll check that out.
So I'll hit this video. When we first got into the discussion of art in transit, I went to Florida transit areas that had shelters designed by school children in each community. And Duval County had amazing bus shelters. I can't remember the name of the agency in Duval, but
It's Jacksonville.
JT.
they partnered with schools, and elementary school students sponsored a shelter, and they have the cutest shelters all over town. Something like maybe 25 schools participated. And I'm sure we could do something like that.
That's what I was saying.
Well, and, it's interesting when you say that, because the other thing is, I know, and this was years ago when they first started doing this, but in Philadelphia, they were going to do some art outside the Philadelphia Art Museum. And what they did was they actually got convicted graffiti artists to do the actual painting. They gave them the design, but they actually, because they figured once the...
Do we have any of those in Pinellas?
Graffiti artists?
Sure. No, convicted.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, the convicted ones, but
Yeah.
but basically they figured the same people. Not only did they get a chance to ultimately, do some more other art in the city, but then they didn't graffiti up the art that they had done. So I don't know. I don't know much graffiti with our children.
Right,
But again, it's getting the community involved.
And shelters on the south side. Melrose Elementary. I think it was an F school, and now it's a C, and they have a good art program. And you just think it's a natural that PSTA could partner with the schools. What else are we doing? We're doing a program. What is the name of it, Cassandra? Where we're sponsoring like a bus stop at the Enterprise Village. Is it called Enterprise Village? Yes, we are actually
Or
going
Finance Park or something.
Yeah, we're going to have a PSTA station as part of Finance Park or Enterprise Village, and it's a long-term sponsorship where the kids, they get a checkbook or whatever, and they have to have a job, and they visit the bank, and they visit a car dealer, and they'll go to PSTA, and we're going to decorate it. So we're already partnering with the Pinellas Education Foundation for that, and I don't see why we couldn't maybe approach eventually, or at least write this letter to the Pinellas Education Foundation or some art. I don't know if Pinellas County has an art foundation anymore, but
Yeah, they do.
yeah, something like that where. And then I went to Dunedin, and there are those beautiful dolphins. They have those gorgeous dolphins. Whoever commissioned that, it would be great to, get with the Dolly and have them commission, 3 Dolly-based. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if they hate the advertising, but we need some way to get co-funding and tell us about the shelter match. A lot of people don't know about shelter match.
Okay, so regular shelter match is where a municipality or a partner, and PSA will split the cost of a standard PSTA shelter 50-50. So everything that goes into the shelter, the shelter structure, the bench, trash can, bike rack, the lighting, pouring the pad, the site design of the landing pad, we just split it 50-50. The other option with the shelter match is a custom shelter match. So if a municipality or a partner somewhere in Pinellas County wants to have a custom shelter, whether that be just something, a structure that they think is interesting, or an art shelter, a pineapple, as long as it's can be ADA compliant and meet with all of the codes and be wind resistant. It's 155 miles per hour. If it meets all those codes and they order the shelter, PSTA pays for the concrete pad and the site design. So we split it that way, and then they can also use our contractor to help install the shelter, but they're responsible for the shelter and installing it. PSTA is responsible for the site and site design concrete. So there's two different options. We've done a couple of the custom shelter matches on the beaches. They have their own designs. So Madeira Beach, I haven't seen this actually. They have an umbrella shelter. And Indian Rocks Beach has their own sort of design of shelter. They're white and they look a lot different than ours.
Like beach cottage.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think they're cool, but I've seen those ones. I haven't seen the umbrella.
Yes, I saw the beach one at Indian Rocks.
Yeah.
That's my beach.
So they're cool. I mean, there's definitely some, challenges with going into procuring your own shelter and making sure it is up to code. But a lot of times these are municipalities that want to do it, and so they know the codes in their own city. And,
Right.
We do have an art shelter in our system. It's at the Epic in the Gateway development.
Yeah, that one is really cool. We haven't. Yeah.
That one was paid for by developer impact fees.
Really? It's like the epicenter? Is that what you mean?
It's
No.
this-
It's an apartment
Apartment.
complex.
Oh,
Epic.
Oh.
Yeah. There's another one. So the Texas Roadhouse on Tyrone Boulevard, I think, has a shelter that looks a lot like the restaurant. The design of the restaurant, so it's right in front of the Texas Roadhouse.
Oh, I've seen
Yeah, I thought that was so cool for some reason when I was on Google Earth, like pinning bus stops, and I saw that one. I don't know. In person, it's less cool, but on Google Earth, it was super cool.
it.
yeah.
The sample is in our department.
Yep. So we have a
So bizarre, but it's
small
very pretty.
scale. So some other art shelter things that we're working on. One of our my coworkers in the planning department is more involved in this North Pinellas Cultural Alliance and PSA partnership for art shelters. So the North Pinellas Cultural Alliance has 6 municipalities in North Pinellas, and they're all kind of interested in having at least one art shelter in each municipality. The city of Dunedin has been the first one that we're trying out. So we donated an old shelter that was PSTA owned, but is in the city of Dunedin. It's in front of the Meese Dunedin Hospital. So we've donated the shelter to them, and they're going to, they put out an RFP for an artist to do some cool art, and the art will represent PSTA, Meese Dunedin Hospital, and the city of Dunedin. So they put out an RFP with mission statements of all 3 of the partners, and they received some art samples from various artists. The RFP was for Pinellas County, but they spread it out to Tampa Bay area artists, and they've gotten a bunch of submissions, and I had a chance to look at a few of them, and so they're narrowing that down, and they'll ultimately pick an artist, and they'll put their art on the shelter, and then the city of Dunedin is going to maintain the shelter.
Do you know how much the city is commissioning that work for?
Yes. So They they have about $20,000.
Wow.
So so PSTA contributed the shelter, and then we're also adding some extra concrete that we'll be paying for to widen the site so they can add a art trash can and an art bike rack. So that's part of the RFP of the artist, is not just to do the shelter, to have a matching trash can and bike rack. And so I don't know.
Is that where the shelter is already, right?
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
I
it's
know where you're talking
just
about.
right there.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll just be right there. But we just added extra concrete so that they'll have enough room for the artistic stuff there. And so this will be the first one for North Pinellas Cultural Alliance, but the idea is to do some more. And if they want to do their own art shelters, we'll be donating or working with them and contributing the concrete and site design. Another project that we've been sort of working on for a long time is the Central Avenue Art and Transit project, which I know started a few years ago, and we're picking up again, working with some artists to design art shelters for each district on Central Avenue. So the Edge District, Grand Central, all of them will have a art shelter in their district, and then the PSTA stop across the street will have a matching bike rack and trash can. So there'll be little pairs of stops throughout Central Avenue, and they'll be served by the Central Avenue trolley. We haven't done too much with the artists. We've met with them a few times, kind of looked at their preliminary designs, and they're working more with the city to sort of finalize things before it'll come back to us, I think.
And that's this.
I guess my question is with us as the TRAC wanting to have an initiative, it sounds like some things are already in place.
Yeah,
I mean,
some things are.
is there something that we add to that as the writers, except for that we are like very much in support of that? We think it's very, you know, I mean,
Yeah, I think there's more we can be doing.
I think we haven't taken a stand, PSTA, necessarily on art shelters. I mean, we have not done any art shelters since I've been here, so the last 4 years. I know that the art shelters that we have, I think there's one by the Palms of Pasadena too, were done before I got here.
Yeah, I think the Epic, when was the Epic one done? Because that's a newer.
And it's a newer one
Yeah.
as well. And I think it's one of those things where it was important to somebody and they made it happen. I think if somebody isn't bringing it up all the time and somebody isn't focused on it, it may not happen. So these ideas that Central Avenue is something the city of St. Petersburg brought to us. The North Pinellas Cultural Alliance found out about our shelter match. And so we're not pushing this, other people are asking us. So I think if this is something that's important to track, then that's where your role is in saying you need to make this part of what you're putting out there, and maybe you make some suggestions about how we make that investment.
yeah, because, go ahead, John.
I have a question. Do some of these, like the Epic and the Red House, do they have an impact fee? Are they fulfilling? Is that part of why this happens, or because I think like the Red House, like it's almost like it's kind of like it's like an ad. It gets your attention, but
Catches
it's
your
not
eye,
some
definitely.
crowd.
Well, that would be in the way that we could fund these. So just like the safety letter was, you know, it's important to riders, it's important to PSTA, but we don't have control over it. This, in some ways, you can see this is the same thing, saying, you know, we want to address this letter to people who control those mobility impact fee dollars and say, we need to give more concrete options for transit improvements, and this is one of them. I mean, I'm thinking out loud of ways that
Sure.
we could take that to the next step, but that's how the Epic was built, because the roads were already there. They didn't have to improve the roads.
It's kind of like, this is a bad example, but I've noticed here in Phoenix, sewage plants, they've,
Murals.
yeah, well, like, almost outside of Phoenix, there's that golf ball thing they have at Disney. That's what these big tanks look like, and that's kind of, we're not sewage, but, you know, that's kind of what you're doing.
Make it more palatable. It came about, and especially Tanya's influence was the city of Largo. We understand why, but they wanted to get rid of shelters. They feel the advertising, this is blight, like billboards. It's against their community, you know, rules or whatever it is, and they just want them gone. We did save the 7, however, if we could make, this is one way that we could talk, you know, Kona and others out of feeling so negative about shelters. We need them, it's so hot here.
And even feeling so negative, what I think we've all talked about is, as riders, we hear the things where riders have a bad image, and by having the shelters, which is, the shelters and the buses are the two visible pieces of transit besides the riders, if to the extent to which it improves the image of ridership and the idea of riding, that has the potential of improving ridership. I mean, yeah, because we always hear, oh, I don't know about the kind of people that ride on it.
You know, and the advertising revenue, it is important, even for the wrap on the bus. I just want to divert to a bus. When I was working at the Pride Parade Festival, and we had that beautiful Ride to Pride bus, so many people at the festival said, are you going to keep it like that? It's so beautiful, it's so different, and we love it. Are you going to keep it like that all year? I wasn't able to say, I said I really didn't know, but they was just so excited over a rainbow, a nice bus. Where is it going to be running? Has it been running? And we could, I don't want to say sell art sponsorships on buses, but not just advertising. You know, you can actually market and partner with organizations that would want to put something just besides a advertisement on a bus. Like a company, let's say Verizon, Verizon, instead of just an ad, you know, Verizon's everywhere and an advertisement splashed on there, ask Verizon, let's do something that would different, attract people. Maybe it has to do with an app or just their color or whatever. The companies are doing a lot of different things, and it could be branding, you know, they could brand the bus, we could allow it, and not cover over the window. There was something that I didn't realize. A lady at one of the town halls said, why do you gotta wrap, I understand that you need advertising, but she liked to look out the window.
Yeah, I heard the same comment.
And she's like, can't you just leave the windows open? Because that's a really fun part about riding transit, is looking out and seeing
Being
everybody.
able to see where you are.
And so the window is real important, and you know, windows are a view into the community and art in and of itself. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about, it's not just the shelter, it's the buses, and it's windows to our community. And Dunedin, you know, you always say, I didn't realize it was the sister city to Scotland, and everything about Dunedin is all about, there's a lot of Scottish, and who knows, they may opt to do something like that. But every municipality has their own little bit of history, and I think it's a wide open topic. There's so much that can be done, but how do we get municipalities and PSTA talking about it happening more and looking for partnerships like that?
Yeah.
That's the question.
I think there's definitely some challenges to doing more art, because the way we procure the shelter, it's very specific to those that design. And if a municipality or partner wants to do something they think is cool, an art shelter, it has to be ADA compliant, it has to be ADA accessible, it has to have the wind loads. There's a lot of requirements for the shelter that I think, and the price definitely turns some people off to procuring their own art shelter. I like the idea of like the working with the schools to have some sort of mural or something on the shelter. I think we'd have to work internally to see if that's something we could do. I guess I always say, oh, I don't see why not. I mean, we just take the panel off, but I think there's if you take the panel off and you put it back, you've upgraded the stop, and now it has to meet all the requirements, and now it doesn't meet the wind loads, and so the shelter has to be removed, and there's a lot that can go into.
There's always something, right?
You touch the shelter, now it has to be up to code. If
Current code, yeah.
Yes, and so because if it's an older shelter, almost all of our shelters are not up to code, and so now it's, it can be removed. Or, I
Yep.
don't know. So,
You know, I've heard that same thing with, because I keep asking people to make their sidewalks and their entrance to their stores handicapped accessible, and it's like, they're okay if they touch nothing, but the minute they touch it, they have to make it perfect, and it's like, so perfect is the enemy of good, and that's unfortunate, but they would rather have us riding in car lanes than put in a ramp that's not perfect.
Right, yeah. I think, it would be great to do more art, and I think that's something that if we're interested in it, we can do. It's just that is a challenge. But
How about with the newer ones, like Henry was showing us about the new ones that are being acquired? Are we allowed, is there any flexibility on those new ones that? Not more?
really. So I've looked, sometimes with these shelter match, people that approach me and ask about shelter match, say, well, can we just change a couple things? And basically, no. We can't really have Brasco alter the shelter in any way. One thing I know we can do is put a decal on the shelter that's allowed. We can't really change the color of the shelter glass. We might be able to change the color of the metal, but not the glass. But we can add a decal of some kind. I know that's allowed. So,
But explain why.
So with the RFP that we have, it's very specific as to what we want. And I guess this color glass was asked for by PSTA and had to be created in China or something. And that color blue is very specific to us, and we are not allowed to have any other color because they worked really hard on getting this very special blue color. So,
Does the blue
Well, when
color,
we procure something and we have very specific, we have the specifications for what we're procuring, then people bid on the price of that
Yeah.
particular material. And so if we change the materials,
yeah,
then it becomes,
you need to
you
re-procure.
need to do a new procurement.
Right. But I know that some of the municipalities have said, well, what can we do to make it stand out a little bit?
Which is a lot of the reason that when we do partner with folks, our contribution to it is the concrete or the installation, and they procure the shelter separately.
Yeah. But the decal thing I think is cool, and so I know, I think it's Indian Shores has a decal on some of their shelters, and they put it on an RFP for an artist to design their decal, which I think it's just their little guy that's standing near the ocean. But they made that into a little decal, and then they were able to put that decal on the shelter. So it's still a PSTA shelter, but it has a little Indian Shores coolness to it.
yes, I was just there over the weekend. Is there a sun on it? It looked really pretty.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
looked like a sunburst.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah, they could have a couple different ones.
When you're talking a decal, are you talking like a really big decal that could take a nice part of the glass, or just a little thing?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't been to Indian Shores, so I don't know the size of their their
I thought it was
detail.
adorable.
Yeah,
I thought that
but
was
yeah, it
adorable.
can add some art, and that's, as far as I know, definitely allowed.
Hmm. Cassandra, what was the name of that stop that you mentioned that Hart had? Marion, what was that?
Marion
Marion
Street
Transit
Transit
Oh,
Center.
Center.
that's a beautiful,
It's in
Mary-
downtown.
beautiful place.
Marion.
Marion Street Transit Center.
We talked about doing a field trip over to Tampa. I was gonna actually give you a call and see if you wanted to
We
ride
better
over.
go do it
Yeah,
quick.
but, well,
Or
No,
they
no,
kill them too good.
no, the buses from, on Ulmerton will continue to go
Oh,
transit.
okay.
And what I was actually thinking of doing was, I was thinking of going up to the Oldsmar Center and then taking a hard bus down to Marion. I was gonna see if
Oh.
anyone wanted to meet me for lunch over at Marion Transit
I mean,
Center.
I could pull it up right
Oh,
now
yeah.
and take a look at it, but
Sure, yeah, you can take a look at
In
it.
person.
I'd like
is
to take a look
beautiful.
at it.
Well, and they also have the Southern Transportation Plaza, which I think now they call the Dick Greco Plaza.
Oh, it's called the-
Where's that?
Which is at the streetcar, it's
The station.
streetcar station.
Oh, by Channel Side? Or,
By the Marriott, by the convention
Yes.
center.
Um,
It was originally the end of the line station.
I think, I was just thinking, I don't like public-private partnerships, but this is one thing. The Tampa Bay Partnership, they're always going on, we need money for, this is something they can do. Seeing that red house thing. Businesses or not, they can, that's,
I think you can ask the municipalities to focus transportation impact dollars on this. And it's probably a little bit more local level than the Tampa Bay Partnership necessarily, unless they wanted to do a big push for art.
And some places, I know Largo, Oldsmar, Pinellas Park, they're looking into doing, having the mobility impact fees, and they can be used for bus shelters. The developers that I've talked with are only interested in doing, the standard PSTA shelter. I don't know if they know much about the, like the idea of a custom shelter, but
You say the developers that an Oldsmar would be contracting with, or, because I'm trying to.
so in Oldsmar,
It's beautiful.
they're
It's like a
doing a
new-
new development by the movie theater, and so the new development is causing some mobility impact fees through the city of Oldsmar. And to mitigate those fees or meet those requirements, one of the ways they can do it is by paying for a bus shelter and upgrading the bus stop that's near there. So they're able to sponsor or pay for the new PSA shelter there. Yeah, just like that's on their property. Or
Or by
the,
Tampa Road, that one, is that?
uh-huh, yeah,
What did you put in?
Huh.
Oh, I did
yeah. And
find
so
Marion Street.
the developers are very interested in getting it done as soon as possible because they want to pay the fee and then so they can start developing. But maybe they don't know that they have the option to do some sort of art shelter. But that's something that's very new that we haven't really heard of or done a lot of work with before, these mobility impact fees. So, something to think about.
'Cause I'm just trying to think of getting back to what our TRAC committee would want to be asking of our board, or asking of our board members, or to sort of review
That's the
and then
Whiting
and then
Street
pass it on.
Station.
So where is that?
Well, that's the Florida Aquarium,
Oh, okay.
but that one that's all lit up right there, yes.
This one?
This
Beautiful.
one is the Whiting Street extension.
Beautiful. I mean, even lighting.
Or did they, there's some of those artistic on 7th or whatever that street is, 8. Some of those?
What do you mean, the stations?
Yeah, right, some of them.
There's public art at the stations. Not all the stations themselves are art in and of themselves. Like, there was art commissioned to be at the station. So like at Channelside, there's some sculptures that are adjacent to the shelter, the
The
streetcar shelter.
one, is it called Centro Ybor? That kind of,
The Centro Ybor station, I don't think has any art in and of itself. That was commissioned by the Transit Authority necessarily.
But anyway.
You know, it hasn't been, it's been something that we've done when somebody else has asked, but it hasn't been an initiative of PSTA. It hasn't been something that the board has asked us to spend staff time on. So if we had somebody who was interested in making it an initiative to push that would be important.
Yeah.
And it may be one of those things where we all think it's nice, but not a top priority.
Right.
And that was the.
You know, and sort of like
pushback
that's,
got.
I mean, that's for you all to decide if it's something that you want to ask the board to make an initiative moving forward, or if there's like other issues that you think are more critical.
I would like to convert that, whatever committee was talking about, there was, well, they're wet already, anyway, why did they need a shoulder?
Right.
Oh, that was
You know,
the
they need to be
Kona.
converted.
Kona, yes.
So, how do
Well,
we?
Yeah, I mean, is it possible for us to even to go to the board that say, you know, to say that this is not our A priority, but this is an overriding priority that should continue to always be taken into consideration, so that we continue to, I'd like to know what advertising, what their view is of the whole value of image, you know, to increased ridership, what is the value of image to the riders, and that this is a piece of it that we want to have always be considered in the negotiations with different communities and with the development of new bus shelters.
It's not as important as safety and regionalism. It just,
It isn't, yeah.
It's not.
I don't think. Well, I'm saying that, you're saying that. I don't know, does everybody agree with that? I mean, it's.
But
this
it's
is
not
like a-
worthless either.
Okay, that's good.
But it's important, especially when
Just,
we need shelters and communities are actually saying get rid of them because there was only 14 people on them, but those are 14 people that would stand in the rain.
yeah.
So,
Well, and I think it's just like when we talked about regionalism. We said, yeah, most of what we do is local, but we do need to have the regional. And, you know, what our priorities are you know, regionalism and safety. But in addition, you know, this is an important part of, you know, of the whole picture, and it should not be, like you said, it's not unimportant, it's not the top priority. And so, you know, yeah, that it does. But I'd like to find, like you said, maybe we can look up what research has been done to show the value of art, public art. You know, because I even found, like, for example, Clearwater had in their, you know, My Clearwater stuff, they talk about public art for the community of Clearwater. So lots of communities understand the value of public art, and I want to have that be, you know, part of our, you know, our overall picture of PSTA too, is to say that we want, you know, to engage communities with public art as well as part of PSTA.
I think that, I would guess a lot of the money that's spent, like in Safety Harbor, is through the CRA for public art. Why don't we kill two birds with one stone, public art on these transit centers, or stops, shelters? You know, like maybe we could, whatever the typical shelter costs, however that works, and then they pay most likely with CRA money.
CRA.
Community redevelopment areas. I don't know what Clearwater does. I know there's a lot of their downtown.
Yeah, Clearwater has a whole lot of other issues too. No, they
So-
do.
It's a separate separate
They
conversation.
do, I know.
Marketing had a really successful program this year where they commissioned high school students to design this summer's student
The
card.
hall pass.
Yeah, the hall pass. And, you know, the winner was recognized at a board meeting,
Right.
and the kids got into it for art. It's a good start, but we want to build on that. So that was, I think they got a lot of applications for that. I don't know what they had to do to go by.
Well, it's building that community engagement, building that community support through art.
Yes,
Mhm.
and that was
Well,
really,
in fact, that's another point that when we craft our letter, is to say, is that to use some of these things as, to build community involvement.
that was successful. Are they going to do it again? I don't know, but that was nice.
I mean, like next year, likely.
Yes, why not? I think it was very successful.
Well, I mean, as long as we have one, because I mean, eventually we'll go all digital.
Oh, that's true.
Mm.
So we won't need it.
This is
Well,
why
you
we
can
need
still,
art
they can
in the
still design it
shelters.
for,
That's why we need art in the shelters, if you're gonna take away the hall pass.
right?
There's gonna be
Well,
other opportunities for art.
Right. Well, and there's the opportunities for art even, like, you know, on the website and stuff like that to feature, you know, whoever.
Cassandra, a project like the Clearwater Transit Center that they're looking to rename, where it hasn't been built yet.
You mean Park Street instead of Park
No,
Street?
what was it? It's called the
The Clearwater Beach
Oh, the
Clearwater
intermodal?
Beach
transit stop.
Transit
Is that the,
stop.
is that the?
Trying not to make it
Mhm.
too big.
Is that the one where, out of Clearwater Beach, that one?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that one. Since it hasn't been built yet, right? Obviously.
Yeah, well, it's in the RFP stage, so,
RFP.
so it's been, the RFP has been released already, and so there's specifications for that out, so it would not be something that would be part of the construction, would have to be sort of an, after.
Add-on?
Yeah.
After fact? Oh, okay. Because that was lovely where they had the ceramic tiles, and of course Subways, you could do anything in Subways, but tiles. And now that I look at the Central Avenue, our road, I can't think of the name of it, our Grand Central Terminal.
Grand Central.
Of course, now that it's built. When it was first built, I thought, wow, it looks like a spaceship, and it was
Mhm.
round, and everybody's going round, and it was really nice. But in the early stages, I mean, my gosh, there could have been a mural on part of it, now that murals are in, or if you're in the early stages, they could maybe perhaps incorporate Clearwater Beach art in there and make the beach properties all very happy, or there should be some kind of branding. I don't know, but
And that sticks out.
it makes it
And people
special.
can-
Like, oh, wow, look, they built that, but wow, like, there's gotta be a wow. We want a wow factor.
No, I mean, I always love when you drive along 19 and you notice where with the concrete, where they have the concrete that has the seashells and the stuff like that
Oh.
on the overpasses. I mean,
Oh.
it's
So
a
pretty.
very nice touch that screams, you know, Florida.
Right,
And it's
right,
nice.
I love that.
Mhm.
And why not? But, like you said, there's specs and there's this and that, there's not much you can do, but,
Well, I think, you know, I don't want to put words in the committee's mouth.
right.
Oh, please, help. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. Help us out.
But you tell us what you want,
Mm.
okay? You tell us what you'd like to see. And that's what you ask the board for us to spend our time.
Mm.
Because we take their direction on what our staff spends our time on and what initiatives we push.
Mhm.
If this is something important to you, then that's what your letter should contain, is what kinds of actions, even if it's, you'd like them to direct staff to do what.
What I'm hearing, and tell me if, to what Cassandra just said, is that what I think I'm hearing is that we would like for art in transit to be one of the tools that's considered that PSTA considers in development of programs, shelters and our stations and so forth, so that it's not just utilitarian, but so that the art is also incorporated into it to improve the community engagement, to improve the image of ridership and the transit system, and potentially the way that it is maintained by the riders too. You know, that goes back to that Philadelphia thing about, you know, the people that have actually been involved with it don't want to deface it. The people that like it are far less likely to deface it. Do you all agree with that, or disagree? Change it?
Yes.
I mean,
And our hashtag is modern transit. And we also are looking to beautify yet to limit our footprint, to be good stewards of the earth in terms of our recycling and using natural things. And so it's all encompassing. But when they dive into these projects, let's think about our image, the beautification, the footprint, the natural resources. We are Tampa Bay. Miami, as far as I'm concerned, at least with some of the things I've seen, Miami's slightly ahead of the, you know, they're a little ahead of the game. And we have a lot of music and arts and cultural programs for kids and high schoolers and colleges, that we're not utilizing the talents of our community to better our infrastructure in a way that we should be in the 21st century. So, you know, I know I'm reaching far out, but
no,
I mean, do you want to ask the board to encourage staff to focus on art as part of the transit system when we build capital projects? Do you want us to ask the board to set aside and they may not do it.
Right.
To set aside funding to procure artists? Do you want to? I mean, how far do you want to go to say? This is important?
I personally like the idea of engaging local communities. I don't see it as much as PSTA engaging with the artists, and more than PSTA engaging with Dunedin and Safety Harbor and North County. I'd say, or St. Pete. Do you all agree? I don't know.
I agree personally. Coming from New York, I mean, one of the first things that I noticed was that you couldn't see out of the windows.
Right.
I thought that was very strange. And then I
Yeah.
understand the advertising element of it, but I think that, and I know this is completely different because it's a way bigger city, but I find that it empowers the community when there are artists involved, and it just maybe at the most basic levels, you know, to start. But that's one thing that's truly important, I think, to any community. I think that to empower young kids and even, you know, as you grow older, rather, it's important. And I think that I was surprised, actually, when I came down here, and it wasn't as much, and it's kind of the black and white, which I understand because of budgetary reasons, but I find it important to have a start, and I think that the fact that we're talking about it is a great thing, you know, but we have to figure out where to go, and I think that, you know, Gloria alluded to it.
Let's take Central Avenue BRT. Is there any plan there for this?
Not for the BRT, there is for Central Avenue itself. So the city has a grant to do transit capital improvements along Central Avenue. We've put in additional monies, not related to the art, but to the overall project, and we've been engaged in the discussion, but not necessarily in what the artists are putting together, because it's about 70% of the city's money and about 30% of ours.
I'd like to add one more thing, I'm sorry. So one of the things that when I first came down to Florida last year was that it's dangerous to take the transit, and I think that perception is everything, in my opinion. And, you know, I was hearing from a lot of people around my age that they kind of, not everybody, I'm sure this is a very slim minority, but they were deterred to take the public transit because of maybe safety reasons, which was great to put the letter forward. But I think that another crucial component is that coolness factor, as much as we may not be able to quantify, but I think that's truly important to get a head start on it, because so many other cities are modernizing, I feel, and it's important. It's an important additive. So.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I heard such horrible stories. It's really unfortunate because in New York it's dangerous in certain places, where you go and you just have to look over your shoulder no matter what. But to hear that it would be as dangerous as it would be down here was upsetting to me, because it's a beach. The beach is a couple miles away, depending upon where you are. So.
Do you mean not
Yeah,
as a safety
sure.
issue, but maybe as a security issue?
Right, like the security issue, which factors into the perception issue, which factors into how comfortable one feels on the public transit. And I think that, going back to art, kind of brings a comfort element, I think, in my opinion. I think that it would be great to get a head start once we're able to figure out what we'd be able to present to a board. Yeah. Yeah.
It's dangerous to drive here. That's one of the.
Yeah, which is worse.
It's not just that
Take your
they're
life into your
aggressive,
hands.
like in the Northeast, they're just bad.
No,
they are.
Just bad, that's right.
And pedestrians and bicycles, I was shocked a few years ago when I heard that this is one of the worst areas for pedestrians and bicyclists, because there's so many cars, and it's just like the people
This
just
particular
run
area.
down.
But they're also, they are
Right.
they are some of the
Right.
most dangerous.
And the people who are in the cars who just push on the pedal seem to be in a rush, knowing that someone's walking or on their bike.
Or in some communities, when you walk into a crosswalk, it's golden. It's like
In
cars,
California, pedestrians are.
cars actually stop for a crosswalk.
Oh,
And here, it's like, unless there's a train coming,
Right.
people don't stop. It's
Not by
gotten pretty,
much,
it's pretty dangerous out
They're
there.
in a rush.
I know, it is.
And everything just goes in a loop.
I have got to leave
I know.
because I think my care ride is probably going to be here, and I saw
And you have
this
to actually
left
call,
too.
we have to wrap up and.
What I guess I'd like to do is what we've done with the other two
Right.
initiatives is I'll talk with Mary Ann, we'll try to put something together. We don't need to present this one, we're not planning to present this one to the board till September. Because Mark is not here, and Mark will be the one that going to the board in August. So we can structure some of this and send it to the full track and see what people want to have. But
Why don't we
thank
do
you.
that, we'll put something together and do it when you're back.
That sounds like a plan.
So you can close, we have to close.
Well then, close the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Stop the
everyone, that
tape.
was wonderful.
Oh, card full, see, this thing doesn't work. Oh, well. Goodbye, everybody.
See you next
Thank
month.
you.
See you in September.
See you all in September.
Yeah.
Have a good trip.
Thank you, wish me luck. This is
You're going to Estonia, right?
Estonia
Oh, wow.
and then
Wow.
Denmark